The first ever undisputed unified welterweight championship in the four-belt era involved two of the most talented fighters we have seen in the modern era. In a fight that most people thought could go either way, Crawford ended up overwhelming Spence completely. What made the difference in this fight? Was it the weight cut, or was it the car crash? Or is Crawford just that good? Errol commands his strength through sheer will, backed by strong fundamentals. He is the truth because he will test his opponent's mental strength, breaking down every opponent with a strong southpaw jab as his key weapon. His jab is so overpowering that it stops his opponents in their track. And right there, as they park their feet for a moment, the big fish swoops in with vicious body shots, powerful left hooks, and straights that are his trademark haymakers. But what happens when his opponent is just as strong-willed and more versatile than the rest? Because as we know, Crawford has many tools in his arsenal, as he is able to fight both right and left-handed. Paired with his quick analytical mastery, he is like nothing else Errol has faced, and that is why he sits atop the pound-for-pound rankings. So what made the difference in the fight? You may say that Errol lost because of the weight cut, but both fighters had to lose some weight to get in the ring that Saturday. Did the car crash make the difference? No. After the car crash, Errol dominated heavy-handed Philly fighter Danny Swift Garcia, something the likes of Porter nor Thurman were able to do as clearly as Errol did, thereafter defeating Ugas in his first ever knockout loss, a man that had just beat the Hall of Famer Manny Pacquiao. What actually made the difference is much more simple. Over his 28 fights prior to facing Crawford, Spence faced great competition, but it is the lack of what he faced that made the difference. Of the 28 fights, Spence had only fought two southpaws, one fight being Chris Van Heerden 8 years prior to the Crawford fight, and the other being Emmanuel Arte 10 years prior. Of course, a world-class fighter like Spence will be ready for a southpaw, but can you really train for a high-level southpaw when you don't know if your opponent will be fighting as an orthodox, a southpaw, or both? More so, can you even get a sparring partner that mimics Crawford's fluidity and motion? But no one would expect Crawford to have Errol's habits down to a T. As a southpaw, Errol has the advantage of facing many right-handed opponents. The feet positioning forces the opposite-handed opponents to look for an outside angle to land a cross, and an inside angle to land jabs. It is harder to land jabs in a southpaw orthodox fight because risking the inside position for a jab is risking being caught by a cross. Errol takes advantage of this by making his opponents overstress about his incoming jabs. He does this until they either mentally lapse or are too exhausted to move away from his incoming pressure, forcing them to fight back against the monster, and that's when he can start bombing away with his left hand. Crawford took Errol's efficiency away by fighting him as a southpaw the whole fight. When fighting somebody with the same power hand, jabs are readily available to be landed by both fighters, and since Spence has only fought 16 rounds in this type of matchup in his career, Crawford gained the upper hand. In this scenario, Spence's defensive flaws were highlighted by Crawford. Crawford was able to capitalize on Spence's low guard and lack of head movement, something that Spence has been able to get away with due to his overpowering of opponents, but not in this case. So as Spence leaned down to jab at Crawford's body, Crawford was ready to release his onslaught.
So for all you guys that doubted me, for all you guys that said I was too small, I was actually too strong.